everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. We thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we're talking about wildfire and how wildfires and weather kind of go hand in hand. And so tonight we have with us Justin Query from Granite Falls, North Carolina. He is in charge of Western North Carolina and the wildfire mitigation program. And we also have with us Hannah Thompson Welch. She's located in Kinston, North Carolina, and she manages Eastern North Carolina and the wildfire mitigation program there. So Hannah, Justin, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate that. I know our first question to a lot of folks who are first time on this program has to deal with weather and how they got interested in weather. And I know weather is a part of your job, but how did you guys get involved in the Forest Service? What really inspired you to want to do this? Hannah, I'll start off with you. Kind of give us a little bit backstory about you and then how you got involved with the North Carolina Forest Service.
Okay. I was one of those kids who liked to romp through the woods and stay on the heels of my father. So trying to keep up with him through the woods, I guess that's what got me into forestry to begin with. But I was a sports medicine major originally and helped some guys out in the dorm with their homework in forestry, and then got bit by the forestry bug. So I worked for Kentucky Division of Forestry for a couple of years and then came to North Carolina, and I've been here 16 and a half years so far.
And Justin, how about you? How did you get caught up in the Forest Service?
Yeah, it's somewhat similar to Hannah. You know, it was a lot of outdoorsy type things with my dad growing up. But then when I got to high school, we had a FFA department there, and they did a lot of stuff with forestry throughout that. And, you know, I realized it was something I really enjoyed and decided to go to school for it and pursue a career in it. And just like Hannah, me and her, we started right about the same time. I'm sitting about 16 and a half years myself now.
Very cool. Those are great stories. So now kind of transitioning into the main topic of tonight, which is obviously wildfires. Justin, I guess we'll kind of start with you. Is the spring fire season the only fire season of the year, or is there another one later in the year as well?
No, we'll typically have another one in the fall of the year, usually right around leaf fall. And we'll have a lot of fresh leaves on the ground, ripe for ignition.
Right, yeah, I can see how that would be an issue. Speaking of ignition, how do some of these fires get started, Hannah?
So in North Carolina, we have around 98% of our fires are caused by humans.
That is terrifying.
Well, it's only 2% are caused by lightning, and that's different in a lot of other parts of the country. But here, with our wildland-urban interface, we have a lot of population, so we have a lot of human-caused fires. And some of those are debris burning is our major cause, around 38%, and then incendiary is about 20%, miscellaneous 14%, and then it goes all the way down to camping at 1%. So it's a variety of human causes, but our main one is debris burning.
And to sort of piggyback on that, to Evan's question, a lot of folks here, we see prescribed burning a lot in our forests. And a lot of folks are always asking, hey, is that fire out of control? Sometimes it can really set up where you get pyrocumulus clouds building over the top of it and just looks like a really ominous situation. So I got to ask, are any prescribed burns responsible for some of these out of control fires, or is that really monitored heavily and that's almost a 0% risk?
Okay, well, I'll take that one then.
I was thinking about it for a moment.
Yeah, we'll go with you first. Sorry, my fault.
So I guess the question is, does a prescribed fire ever turn into a wildfire? Is that the long and short of it? Yes, it has happened before. And will it happen again? Yes, it probably will. We do our best to plan for that not to happen. But, you know, when you're dealing with something like fire and something as with weather, and, you know, it can be an unpredictable thing. As much as we like to think we can predict it, you can have a wind shift that you didn't see coming. You can have, you know, a whole host of different things. You know, relative humidities will drop out lower than what you thought they were going to be. And, you know, experience some more extreme fire behavior than what you were thinking you would have that day.
Justin, just quick piggyback off of that. You're kind of talking about the weather variabilities. When you find yourself on some of these larger wildfires like we experienced in Western North Carolina back a couple of years ago, and they grow so large, and you guys actually have like a command post, and you have Forest Service and firefighters. Do you guys ever get like meteorologists that on like site to help you out with like you talked about humidity or wind shifts or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get an incident meteorologist on most of our larger incidents, and then we'll also get some fire behavior analysis guys out there that will help to take those weather parameters, and they'll actually try to turn that into what will the fire actually do, with the weather parameters that they're given. So yeah, we'll get incident meteorologists out there on our fires, our larger ones.
Another piggyback where Evan was talking about causes. Something that comes to mind, which I don't think so. Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you follow Western North Carolina as much as I do. The flash drought that we had back last fall, where we had, I think, the whole month of September we were very dry into October. I was actually looking at some of my forecast graphics earlier today and noticed that we had high temperatures in the first week of October, still in the 80s and 90s. What was that like? How, flash droughts happen. Well, a long-term drought, you can kind of predict, we have a chance of seeing fires, but these flash droughts that are caused by the lack of precipitation, really high heat, and everything's kind of starting to die off from summer into the fall season. You guys, I guess, assuming when this happens, Hannah, you and Justin, you guys are watching this, and everybody really has to be on guard for something that could quickly happen.
Yeah, and we put a lot of resources into place. There was a lot of pre-planning efforts that went into the flash drought situation from last year. So we were ready to move in the case that we had a larger fire occurrence event where we had a bunch of new ignitions. And so there were plans in place to aggressively hit those where they were, and even calling in out of region resources for that.
Very good. So I'm sort of, going to ride along with this, Scotty, because I know one of our topics is going to be how does weather play into these fires? And we talked about wind earlier, right? We talked about the lack of rain, talked about droughts. You mentioned something earlier, Hannah, about winds and sort of, we saw what happened in Western North Carolina a few years back. We saw what happened at Gatlinburg. And we saw what happened ahead of the cold front where convergent winds drove that fire. What sort of factors are you looking for severe type events to occur, severe outbreaks, or these fires are spread very quickly? In other words, how is weather playing into everything that you're doing?
Well, weather is a huge part of what we do every day. So you almost become an amateur meteorologist when you join the Forest Service, not even by choice. It just happens.
Sure. So you're looking at all the models like us too, right?
Yeah, we are. We're looking at similar products, predictive services, long range planning, long range forecasting, a bunch of different data sets that we look at. And we even have a portal that's available to anyone that wants to look at it with a lot of climate data that's in there.
Very good. And Justin, are you guys working with the National Weather Service offices in the local areas, or if it's divided down the region, you go to two different offices, but you're working closely with them, correct?
Yeah, that's right. A lot of these offices, we have direct numbers where we can call them. One of the products we always love to get from them is a spot weather forecast, where we can really pinpoint. I want to know what the weather's going to be at this exact location. So yeah, we're in very frequent contact with our National Weather Service guys.
And so I'm gonna kind of switch this because we're starting to talk about territory, right? And we're looking at mountainous areas versus coastal plains. So like what would be differences between a fire in the mountains in Western North Carolina and a fire in Eastern North Carolina?
So, whenever we're dealing with fires in the western part of North Carolina or the mountains, the biggest difference there is we have a lot of terrain to deal with. Whenever you have a wildfire on a steep slope, it's going to burn typically a lot faster going upslope. The other issue that we run into is the equipment that we can use in some of these terrains. You can't put a bulldozer on a 50 or 60% slope. You can, it's just very, very tricky. So most of the firefighting that we do in that type of terrain is, a lot of manpower with hand tools. So, the actual vegetation that we have, there is a difference there. So luckily the vegetation doesn't burn quite as severely as it does in the east. And I would say Hannah will probably cover some of that. She talks about the eastern fires. But I was just going to mention, we've referred back to 2016 several times. And we definitely had a major fire problem that fall. I believe we burned somewhere around 62,000 acres just within a 2-month period. It was a real problem in Western North Carolina that during that fall.
Yeah, and in eastern North Carolina, while we don't have to deal with mountainous terrain, we do have to deal with a lot of challenges all in flat country or in rolling hill country. Our fuels are more volatile and they burn with greater intensity, but we can use heavy equipment such as tractor plows, which is a bulldozer with a fire plow behind it. And though that equipment's used more easily in most cases, unless the soil is not it can't support the weight of the equipment. So we use that equipment to break through organic soil or organic matter down to bare mineral soil is what we're using that for. So in many cases, some of these fires down east will smolder across the surface of the ground until it burns deep enough in organic soil material. And when that happens, then we have fires that go on for a long period of time, sometimes months. And with that, we have a lot of smoke impacts as well. So we get a lot of people who are concerned during those types of fires that we have. And some of those exist in what's called a pocosin, which translates to swamp on a hill or a shrub bog, it's also known as. So those are wetlands with deep acidic sandy peat soils, and they have like an accumulation of organic material that it'll resemble muck, black muck underneath the crust of the surface. So, and that builds up over years and years and years. But those are fire adapted ecosystems, and in the east we are used to having to deal with that type of an ecosystem.
I remember the fires. I'm trying to remember what year it was, where southeastern North Carolina near the coast and northern Myrtle Beach and the Grand Strand areas, they had a serious breakout up there. And smoke, we're going right into our next topic, which is going to be smoke management. Visibility factors, travel, the dangers of being on the road near these things and not knowing where the fire actually is and not being able to see. I mean, we've seen that out west in California. Here, what are your challenges with smoke management? How do you get the word out to folks?
We use a lot of tools in the toolbox to get the word out. We always have public information officers on any fires that we have, and then we have public information officers with our agency, and we're constantly working to try to get the word out to the general public and any of our shareholders or stakeholders, cooperators that we need to advise on those types of issues. But it takes a broad toolbox full of tools to get the word out. So we use social media, we use email, we use all the traditional methods through news releases, and then we invite the news media out to some of our fires so they can get the word out for us as well.
One thing that I know you guys look at, and actually I'm going to share my screen here for those folks who are watching, is you guys look at all kinds of parameters. And I know we were talking a little bit about that. You have a lot of tools in the toolbox. One thing, since the wildfires here in Western North Carolina a couple of years back, I've got a tab now on my laptop that has labeled fire weather, meteorology, and kind of look at some of this stuff. So if you guys don't mind, we don't have to go through everything, but as we tie in like weather to you guys, what all indexes and things are you guys looking at? I know we have the KBDI index. You guys look at kind of like the initiation point. You're looking for fuels, fine fuels. Kind of talk to us a little bit about that and what you guys really look at day to day for the potential for wildfires.
Yeah, that's So our fire weather intelligence portal. This has been a great tool for us as fire managers. In the prescribed burn realm, but also for the wildfire realm here too. Because a lot of times when we're looking at wildfire, we're not just looking at one specific area or just one county. A lot of times we're looking at, like an 8-county district, or possibly a 30-county region, or the whole state. So we may need to look at different indices crossing over the state. So some of your more obvious ones, temperature, relative humidity, wind speed and direction, precipitation over the past 24 hours. We like to look at some of that stuff, but some of the other things that we really like to look at are, let's say, the Keach-Byram Drought Index. That's one that can tell us, just how dry it actually is out there. The lower the number, the wetter it is. As we start going up closer, 500, that means we're starting to get into a pretty severe, or significant drought situation. Some of our other parameters that we look at, you mentioned ignition component. That is one, pretty much tells us how easily a fire is going to ignite. Some of the other ones we're looking at, the energy release component right there. That's one that just tells us how intense that fire is going to burn. So there's a lot of different indices in there, and all of them are relative. That just it's just another tool in our toolbox, as Hannah mentioned earlier. Just different things we can look at that'll help us as fire managers to determine how that fire will burn on any given day.
And how are these values come up with? Like, is there like tools that you guys have that you go out and sample the soil? How do these values come up there? I mean,
right.
What all goes into that?
So you'll notice they're kind of placed oddly across the state there. There's actually a small weather station at each of those that are taken. We actually have small fuel sticks out there, and that takes some of our fuel moistures, and then a lot of your typical weather readings such as temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, precipitation. It also takes in solar radiation. Trying to think if there was anything else that I'm missing on those. But those are called, let's see, remote automated weather stations.
And another thing, Hannah, I'll bring you into this. This is another thing that I look at. It's the national, the NICC. It kind of gives you a seasonal outlook for wildfire.
These outlooks are constantly in our minds. We do an annual refresher training every year, and at that meeting we go over these for the upcoming season, and that's getting us ready for the spring fire season, leading up to our work capacity test that we take annually so we can travel and help other like western states whenever they are having large fires as well. So we look at these and we brief on these throughout the months, even into the summer and into the fall. So we are looking at this way ahead of time. And as soon as this information is released, a lot of times you'll see it floating around social media pages and other things. So it's a hot topic of conversation for any wildland firefighter.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe as we went into last fall of 2019, it was above average for the Southeast just because of the flash drought. I believe that's what I remember seeing. So another agency in the weather community that does some fire forecasting, Justin, is the Storm Prediction Center, where they issue fire forecasts. Do you guys, maybe the Forest office in North Carolina, maybe in Raleigh, do you guys coordinate with them, or how do you guys get those outlooks, or how does that work?
I'll be honest with you. Whenever you sent me, we had talked about that earlier. I think that may have been yesterday.
Yes.
That was the first time that I had dealt with that. I don't know if Hannah has worked with that particular tool, but I played around with it a little bit, and it seems like that's definitely another tool that I'm putting into my toolbox. So, Hannah, I don't know if you had seen that before or not.
I have not.
Well, I'm glad we were able to help you guys out.
Yeah.
For those who may be watching or listening to the podcast, we've had on Randy Bauer from National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, who is also in with the Storm Prediction Center. And they issue these fire weather outlooks for the day of and then 3 to 8 days. It's kind of like the severe weather outlooks, Evan and Shay, that we see on a daily basis, but they kind of highlight areas that that they're concerned about for the potential of some increased fire danger. And Shay, correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm not mistaken, we kind of saw this last year in eastern North Carolina, northeast South Carolina, where dry lightning was highlighted for portions of the area.
No, that's exactly right. They've even done it a little bit out in the Midwest as well during some of the drier seasons and where positive strikes might be forecast. Anything of heat values where drought conditions, severe drought conditions are existing, and it seemed like it was maybe a little controversial, but at the same time, they're trying to incorporate more into their risk factor for severe weather to be a threat, even more of a threat on any level. So they're working with the Forestry Department and others as well, from what I understand. I'd like to learn more about that this year because it is kind of new with them. So yeah, I think to me, it's a good effort on their part.
Definitely so. Justin, Hannah, one reason that we wanted to invite you guys on tonight is the North Carolina Forest Service is really putting a big campaign out about being ready and prepared for fires. But one thing I wanted to talk about before we do that was the idea of prescribed burning and how that kind of helps you guys get ready for the wildfire season. So could you briefly kind of talk about the purpose of prescribed burnings, and then we can kind of go into the wildfire mitigation, what you need to do as we get into the fire weather season?
I'll go ahead and grab that one. So our prescribed burns, we're going to do those anytime that we have a forest stand out here that we want to reduce the hazard in. If you don't have a fire in there, the leaf litter, the pine litter just continues falling to the ground year after year after year, and it accumulates more and more and more. So the more it accumulates, the more of a hazard you have. Whenever you do have a wildfire come through, it's going to have a pretty extreme danger there. So what we do is we'll come through and we'll actually burn the understory and reduce that wildfire hazard. But we'll do it under controlled conditions, or we'll make a pretty strict prescription as far as the weather goes, and follow that to a T in order to hopefully control that prescribed burn like we were talking about earlier.
And so, Justin, one thing that you guys are doing with that prescribed burning, trying to prevent these wildfires, but if we do see some coming, how can folks prepare for these? I know Shay alluded to Gatlinburg earlier. We kind of have seen some of the scary videos out of California, the fires that were out there, and how these people are kind of just grabbing what they can and getting out before all heck breaks loose. What can folks do now while things are kind of wet, like we were talking about? It's pretty wet outside, but as we could possibly enter a dry part of any time of this upcoming year, how can folks get ready around the house to get prepared for the possibility of these wildfires?
But the first step for most homeowners is you need to realize what your risk is. And so we always recommend that folks actually do an assessment of their own home, or possibly have their neighbor do an assessment of their home. And if they will go to resistwildfirenc.org, that is a webpage that we run, and we actually have some links to a home assessment sheet on there. But some different things that are just really quick and easy that any homeowner can do. The biggest one we see is keeping your roof and your gutters clean. You wouldn't believe how many homes I go out to and I'll take a look around and the gutters will just be simply packed full of leaves and debris. The fact is, when a wildfire comes through, it will simply pelt the home with embers, just thousands upon thousands of embers. And it just takes one ember landing in that gutter or on that roof, in the eave of that roof where the debris has piled up, and it could easily ignite and start a wildfire there. Ignite that home. And the last place that you want to have a fire is on the roof of your house. So that's one, really quick and easy mitigation strategy that folks can do.
We definitely want to ask, what's the best way to see what you're reporting out? I know you mentioned wildfire.northcarolina.org. Are there any other social media sites or websites that we could go to view your material and what you're reporting out on?
Yeah, the biggest one that we recommend right now is the one that we're on is going to resistwildfirenc.org. You can also go to firewise.org. That is run by NFPA. That's another great resource for homeowners to take a look at. I think that's the only two that's coming to mind right off the top of my head. Hannah, do you have any others that you can think of?
Do you have a Twitter account or Facebook page or anything?
Yeah, we do. The North Carolina Forest Service does have a Facebook page, and I think we do have a Twitter, but I'm not active on that one. So I know we do periodically post stuff for mitigation strategies on there.
Justin, it was a pleasure having you on. Anything else you or Hannah would like to cover kind of before we close out the program?
Well, I think the other mitigation strategy I was going to cover real quickly was just going to be, the one of the most important zones around the house are just the first 5 feet around the home. And that's typically where we have a lot of our flower beds, where we do a lot of our landscaping. So it's very important, the things that we put there, such as not putting highly flammable plants in that area. And then the mulch what we're putting down on the ground there is not using a flammable mulch, not using anything that's organic that can catch fire, such as pine needles or a shredded bark. The best thing we could recommend is like a hardscape, such as a lava rock or a pea gravel, or possibly even a river rock.
Hannah, any other ideas that you could give folks about how they could prepare for upcoming wildfire season?
It's important to work with your neighbors. It's important to recognize what type of situation you have right immediately around your house and take appropriate measures to reduce risk ahead of fire season approaching. So it's really important to work with those around you, because if they have risk, then likely their risk adjoins your risk. Because we talk about home ignition zones. So the zones around your house from 0 to 5 foot is your immediate zone, and then from 5 to 30 feet is your intermediate zone. And if those 30-foot circles, if you imagine a circle around your house at 30-foot distance, then if it touches another home's 30-foot zone, then if worst case scenario happened, there could be structure-to-structure ignition. So anything you can do to reduce the risk around your home, that's what you should be doing.
Justin, Hannah, one other thing I think pops into my mind that you see a lot of people are out there when we get into these fire situations, they're trying to extinguish a fire with a garden hose that they have at their house, maybe when evacuations have been ordered. Would you guys suggest, hey, just get your stuff, follow the evacuation orders, let the firefighters, let you folks take care of the fire?
Yes, absolutely. If evacuation orders have been made, by all means, go ahead and follow them. A garden hose is not going to do much for that fire. You're putting your life and your family, in harm's way by sticking around.
Take these preparation tips and use them to your advantage. That way that you're prepared before the next fire. So we appreciate you guys joining us tonight here on the Carolina Weather Group. We hope you'll tune in next Wednesday for an all-new episode. Have a great evening, everyone.